Well, it's that time of the year again where we are once again doing the moving forward series for all these teams that are eliminated or those playoff team that is going to be eliminated in the playoffs until we leading to the point where who exactly is going to be winning MLS Cup this year. And for the second year in a row, unfortunately, we have to start with the two-time Anthony Precourt Memorial Wooden Spoon winner FC Cincinnati, who finished the season with a 4-4-15 record and only had 16 points. They only scored 12 goals this season, which by far is probably the fewest that any MLS team has ever scored in a single season, albeit this year it is a shortened season. But yeah, 12 goals in a 23 game schedule is definitely not a good scoring rate. They gave up 36 goals this season, and as much as I know people say that this season for FC Cincinnati is kind of similar to last year where it's absolutely horrible, it's technically not exactly true. The fact that I think their defense have definitely improved this season, and that this is actually not the worst defensive team in the Eastern Conference. There's actually two other teams that has a worse defense than they are, and there's even, I think, 10 other teams that is above them in terms of having give up more goals than they have given up this season. And that if you would have compared to last year, where they were actually averaging over 2 goals scored that season, this year, if you would have took the average, they were only averaging 1.5 goals that conceded this season. So there's no doubt the defense have definitely improved this season, and they weren't just like leaking goal left and right, although there was a lot of games where they finished like 0-0 and had a lot of shutout, which kind of probably helps in terms of the goals allowed ratio in terms of this season. And their goal differential is -24, and sadly that is the worst goal differential out of anybody in the league this season. And again, they finished dead last in MLS, and even though I know the Wooden Spoon is not going to be awarded this year, they still will remember as now finishing for the second year in a row in that Wooden Spoon spot and got the Wooden Spoon for the second time. Now, in something that I'm going to do a little bit different, or actually it's not really something I'm going to do a little different, but more like something I'm going to introduce in the moving forward series, is I'm going to talk about the MVP and the most disappointing player of the year for all of these teams. And for the MVP, yeah, it's definitely hard to choose an MVP of this team because there wasn't really a lot of standout player. I mean, I could have easily gone with a couple of defenders with the likes of Harris Medunian and even Kendall Yawstan, but I'm actually going to go with Harris Medunian because, you know, I think he is definitely one of their better player this season, and he did a good job in terms of defensive end. And let's also not forget he scored that Olympico goal, which has got to be one of the few highlights that FC Cincinnati had this season. The disappointing player, there's no doubt that there's a lot of disappointing player that I could put up on the list, but probably the most disappointing player for FC Cincinnati has to be Jurgen Locadia. I mean, he was bought this season as a guy to fix their goal scoring problem, and early on we kind of saw there was some glimpse of hope that he can of course solve that problem, and that he even have the right attitude, saying that he loves the city and he loves to play for FC Cincinnati. Well, the only problem is, even though he had the right attitude, he could not perform and back up his words in terms of he will score goals for this team, because he went through a very long spell of without scoring a goal. In fact, that spell is still going on right now. We only have scored 1 goal so far this season, ever since the MLS's back tournament began, and I think he only scored 2 goals so far this season. And it will be interesting to see whether or not if FC Cincinnati is even going to be thinking about renewing his loan. Like, I actually did saw on the FC Cincinnati website that he is actually going to be under contract in 2021, so most likely either they extended his loan, or the fact that, you know, that loan is actually going to run to 2021. They had a discussion with Brighton, the fact that they're going to extend his loan until 2021 because of the circumstances that is going on right now. But yeah, I think if he continues to struggle for FC Cincinnati, I will be shocked if he is going to be a permanent signing, and that he most likely is going to be going back to Brighton. But yeah, there's no doubt that he has got to be the most disappointing player. Consider how he was supposed to be the number 9 that they were hoping that is going to be the case, and it just never really kind of worked out. Now, in terms of the top goal scored, and I know this is gonna be kind of a joke, but I'm actually surprised that I was able to fill out the top goal scorer list, because when you only score 12 goals this season, you don't expect me to pretty much fill out the top 5 list of the top goals scored for this team. But I did do it with their top goal scorer being Yaya Kubo, scoring 3 goals this season, which has got to be the lowest amount of goals in the entire season to basically finish in top goal scoring mark. Then you got Brandon Vasquez basically scored with 2 goals, and that's the only 2 players that had multi-goals this season. As the rest of the way, pretty much there's 7 players that is tied with just 1 goal. You got Harris Badunian, Nick Hagelin, and Joe Zhao among the 3 that is tied with those 7 players that only have scored 1 goal this season. Now, on the top assist leader, yeah, this is where that joke of me saying that I'm surprised that I wasn't able to fill out the top 5 list kind of came true. I mean, I wasn't able to fill out the top 5 list at all, because there was only 4 guys that actually got on the assist chart for FC Cincinnati this year. You got Adrian Rekentine with 2 assists alongside with Brandon Vasquez. Then you got Greg Garza with 1 assist, and Harris Madunian finished with 1 assist this season. Now, what went right for FC Cincinnati? And, despite the fact I said there wasn't really much that went right with this team, at least they made it to the round of 16 of the MLS's back tournament, and this is probably, if not the most impressive moment in their franchise history this season, because nobody thought that they were going to be made it to the round of 16. Like, everybody thought that they were just going to be a punching bag, and especially after that 4-0 defeat on the first game of the MLS's back tournament in the hands of their in-state rival Columbus Crew. Everybody thought that this team is just going to be a punching bag, and that pretty much they will be knocked out of the MLS's back tournament. But what people didn't know is that they won their next 2 games and made it to the round of 16. And in that game against the Portland Timbers, they actually almost knocked out the Timbers. I mean, the Timbers eventually did went on to win MLS is back, but they could have been out at the round of 16 if it wasn't for the fact that the penalty kick shootout didn't go in favor of FC Cincinnati, and also the fact that Jurgen Locadia, we will always remember that miss that he had in the 87th minute, and my God, if he actually put that one away, there would have been no penalty kick shootout, and that FC Cincinnati would have made it to the quarterfinal, which is even a bigger shock, the fact that they were able to win a playoff game in the MLS's back tournament, let alone just qualifying for the round of 16. But fortunately, that didn't happen. But the other thing that went right for them is that they won a Hell is Real derby. So after pretty much 6 tries of not able to beat their in-state rival Columbus Crew, they finally did it this year. And what's even more impressive is that they did it in a year where the Columbus Crew was considered one of the best team in the league. Now, granted, when they did play the Columbus Crew, they were of course playing them at home, which Columbus this season, as good as they have been this year, the road form is one of the biggest issue, and that they still have not won a single road game. So there was definitely a good chance that Cincinnati could potentially get a win in that, but there was also a chance that that game is probably going to end 0-0, because they probably have the record of the most 0-0 draw this season, with the way that they always tend to had that score in most of their home games. I mean, in fact, I think there was one time where they had 4 straight home games that the final score of the game was ended in a scoreless draw. But they did win the Hell is Real derby during that time. And that, again, the other thing that went right is that there's definitely improvement on the defensive end. And, as bad as how the team looks, I think when you look on the defensive end, they definitely look much more stable than it is last year, and that they definitely don't look like a team that last year that just shipped goals for fun and just be everybody's punching bag. They do definitely try to make you work in terms of trying to get wins compared to past year, but the only problem with this team is that they just have no attacking threat. And this is where we're going to go to what went wrong, which is probably the easiest thing to say. They just have no attacking threat whatsoever. And when you of course are able to go 1-0 up against FC Cincinnati, yeah, the game is pretty much over, because Cincinnati ain't going to be coming back, because they just don't have any attacking threat to kind of match that kind of way to try to come back into the game. Most players they bought this offseason turns out to be big bust. One of them, as I mentioned, is my most disappointing player, Jurgen Locadia, who, again, they thought he was going to be the number 9 that they've been looking for. Didn't quite work out in the end. Even if you look at the other big DP that they signed, Yaya Kubo. Yes, he did finish the top goal scorer list on this chart, but still, only 3 goals to show for this season, and you're a DP player. Yeah, that's probably not even close to be worthy of being a designated player if you're only going to contribute just 3 goals for the entire team. And the other non-DP signing in terms of the midfield and defense also kind of came with a little bit of flop, and that they didn't really do well whatsoever. So yeah, most of the players that they bought in the offseason and tried to overhaul the squad has just turned out to be big bust, which that obviously does make me wonder that, is it just more than the fact that it's the team that is being horrible and the squad is just nowhere near MLS level is the reason why FC Cincinnati is bad? Is there more to do with the front office and just the ownership with this team, where people on that front office is probably making bad decisions, and therefore that is also the reason why they are kind of hold back, which is also kind of what I said before, where moving forward, as I will mention a little bit later, where they're going to go through another squad overhaul, and that they already kind of announced their end of season roster move literally just hours after they got eliminated, and hours after that final game against Inter Miami, that it looked like they're going to go through another squad overhaul. But is it more to do with just a squad overhaul, and that we also have to look into the front office, where there might be some people in that front office that might be on either a real hot seat or could be out in the offseason because of how bad things have gone in terms of trying to put a competitive MLS team. And then the final thing that went wrong, and I know this didn't happen this season, but I just kind of want to mention this again, is the Ron Jans situation. This, if you remember all the way back, Ron Jan was fired by this team because he made some racial remark during the locker room, and it was him kind of using the N word and during something that happened in the locker room, which to this day we still don't know if that is actually true, and that I haven't even heard anything about the investigation that and what's the verdict of it. But I guess maybe the verdict of that we will never find out, because eventually FC Cincinnati did the right thing, and that they basically decided to basically axe him. And again, I know I was under heavy scrutiny when I made that video, and there was a lot of people that was disliking in that video and put a lot of criticism of how I want to mention, but I think at the end of the day that was still just the right thing to do. And that, again, if there is going to be some more people that's going to be in the comment section, going to be putting their negative point, I have no problem with that, but because this is just my opinion in terms of that situation, and it just seems like that was just kind of the situation where my opinion was kind of on the unpopular end of that situation. But moving forward for this FC Cincinnati side, as I said, they're going to go through another squad overhaul, but it'll be interesting to see, is it just a squad overhaul, or is there actually going to be a front office overhaul too, with the way that there's definitely some high rank official on that team that probably need to go, with the way that they've been very incompetent in terms of building this team. The other thing moving forward to them is that people forgot that this is actually the last season that they're going to be playing at Nippert Stadium, and that they are going to be moving into that brand new stadium that is West End Stadium heading into next season. And this is actually good news for FC Cincinnati, not only the fact that they have a soccer specific stadium and finally they move out of that hellhole that is known as Nippert Stadium. I mean, I want to say it's not really a hellhole, but in many ways that stadium is clearly not fit for MLS, and there's just so many times where not only the pitch is considered one of the worst artificial turf in MLS, but just the camera angle, and also the way that a lot of Cincinnati fans probably did not really think that they have a true MLS experience, just to basically sit in a ground that was never designed for soccer. It's more designed for college football. But they are going to be moving into that new stadium. But besides that, the other good news is this means that they should be improved in terms of their performance. Because if you look at the last couple of stadium opening, the most recent one, Allianz Field at Minnesota, I know that when that stadium was open, the Loons immediately become a better team. Like after the first 2 years where they were kind of in something similar to what FC Cincinnati does, although their first 2 year isn't as bad as what FC Cincinnati has done in their first 2 seasons, they immediately turned it around in their 3rd year, and that they actually even got to the US Open Cup alongside with hosting their first ever playoff game at Allianz Field. And that even previously, when DC United basically had their opening of Audi Field in July, where they was really struggling, once they play in that new stadium, they immediately become one of the hottest, if not the hottest team in MLS, and made it to the playoffs, and even hosting a home playoff game at Audi Field. And, I'm not saying that FC Cincinnati is just going to magically be very good next season when they have their new stadium, but, there's just something about new stadium being open, and there's just something about that just give the team a lot of spirits up, the fact that they can actually do very well, and that be interesting to see whether that trend is going to continue, where FC Cincinnati, once they finally have their own soccer specific stadium, they're gonna improve heading into the 3rd season and might even make it to the playoffs, although I think that's a little bit too optimistic, knowing what we still don't know. What are they going to do this offseason and how they're going to fix their issue? Like, I think the biggest issue they definitely need to fix this offseason has to be on the attacking end. And that the defensive end, I think it has been relatively solid this year, but on the attacking end is the real issue, and that they need to probably bring in another attacker or two to try to improve this attack. And finally, the last question I'll ask for FC Cincinnati moving forward is Yawstan actually the right man for this job? Now, I'm not going to judge too much on Yawstan in terms of his first season for FC Cincinnati, mainly because this is not his team. Like, this is the team that Ron Jan and also so pretty much this previous off-season that FC Cincinnati was trying to mash into an MLS team, and that pretty much none of the player that Yawstan currently is coaching, he actually bought during the transfer window whatsoever. So I'm not going to blame I'm going to put too much blame that he hasn't done a great job with this team. However, I think heading into the next season, that could really be time to really judge whether or not if Yawstan is actually the right man for this job once he does get the players that he wants to be in this team. And that, nowadays, knowing the fact that the coaching carousel is definitely swinging in full gear, and that the turnover rate in terms of coaching in MLS is continued to be very, very high compared to the past couple of years. If you are not going to get resort in a season, and if you start to go for a long-term struggle, front office are not afraid to pull the trigger and put their head coach on the chopping block once they go on a bad run. So it would be interesting to see what does FC Cincinnati do if next year they're going to once again go into a similar situation where they've been in the first 2 seasons, which has been a laughing stock in MLS, and that maybe Yawstan might not actually be the right man for them. But overall, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? And, overall, I really hope this offseason FC Cincinnati does get things right. Like, I'm not really a Cincinnati fan, but I really want for them to actually do well in the league and not just be like a punching bag and just a basement dweller for pretty much their first 3 seasons. I mean, as a Loons fan, I know how that feel when we were kind of the basement dweller coming into the league for the first 2 seasons, but things immediately changed with some good off-season acquisition that we made. Hopefully, FC Cincinnati is going to do the same thing, and that, like I said, that new stadium I think will definitely give a little bit uplift in terms of this team and make them believe that they can, of course, get resort, and that, even if they don't make the playoffs next season, if they can show some sign that they can actually not just be a punching line of this league and actually can put in some resort as we're going to see next season, I think this team does have a decent future, and that this will not be a team that we'll remember. Kind of similar to what we remember with Chivas USA, where they had a long spell of bad years, and even with those good years that they had, once they had a long spell of bad years, they just kind of become a forgot team and become kind of the laughing stock of the league. So I'm really hoping next year FC Cincinnati is gonna be better, but let me know in the comments below if you're a Cincinnati fan. What do you think went right this year? What went wrong? And moving forward, what do you think is the most important thing to get this team back on track and actually get this team to be a competitive team heading into next season in MLS? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.